It's a keynote speaker to start things off. I'd like to welcome to the stage to talk more about purchase behavior targeting insights, Brett Orlansky from Bango. Thank you. There's Mike. There's a clicker.
Cool, thanks. Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Yeah? Oh, great. Cool. It's nice to meet you all. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Brett Orlansky from Bango. Bango is a company based in the UK. I'll be telling you more about what we do and how we work with purchase behavior targeting, but that's the focus of my presentation today, is using purchase behavior targeting to scale your in-app purchases in the age of the apocalypse. The apocalypse is sort of the theme. We have our zombies and the comic books you see. What's going on? Why do we call this the apocalypse? I mean, it's supposed to be sort of a tongue-in-cheek reference to the situation that we all find ourselves in, this zombie apocalypse. Well, go back a few years ago before IDFA was deprecated, finding your users was never easy, but it was easier. It was never cheap, but it was cheaper. It was a little more straightforward and conventional. You could find the users that you wanted, you could monetize with them better, but things have changed, right? The lovely app avenue that we all used to live on and do our business on has now changed, and we're left with the zombies of our users that cannot be found. This is the apocalypse. This is sort of the situation that we have, like I say, find ourselves in. But we didn't really just discover this ourselves. We didn't really announce it. We kind of wanted to ask the community to say, well, is this really as bad as we think it is? So we asked a few folks. We ran a survey, and it's pretty rough. It's pretty rough out there. And I know it doesn't come as news, but to quantify what we're talking about, of the advertisers that we polled, 60% of them, this is on the left here, said that the recent changes have made it harder to acquire paying users. And I think depending upon the way a question could be asked, it's probably even worse than 60%. You can see the quote from The Verge that the prompt that Apple now puts up has cost Meta $10 billion in revenue alone, and of course, it's not just that. You can see the decline in the Facebook stock price. So this is really, really having a tragic impact on the industry. Again, not news, but we can quantify it. 27% of the apps that we spoke to, the app developers, actually expected that they're going to totally shut down their business because of this. So it is pretty ugly. Okay, so what do you do, right? That's the situation, that's the environment that we're in. What can you do about it? Because the situation that you need, your alternative to scaling out of this, has to be, of course, IDFA and cookie free and GDPR and CCPA compliant. It has to be regulatorily compliant. Brings us to the point of what Bango is all about. Purchase behavior targeting is a method, it's a strategy, it's a different type of data that can be used to build custom audiences that do not require IDFA, that are CCPA, GDPR compliant, and are incredibly scalable. It's truly novel, not based on psychographics or demographics. It's based on, like it sounds, like things that you've actually purchased. And so far, it seems to be a pretty convincing argument that we're making. A lot of advertisers are using this method. So what is this? Where does this come from? This is comes back to what Bango does. At our core, Bango, a company, we're based in the UK, traded on the London Stock Exchange. We are, at our core, a payments processor, an alternative payments processor. We process literally billions of dollars of in-app purchases across billions of dollars per year globally, across millions of apps in the major app stores. Collectively, we take this data, we segment it, anonymize it, and put it into audiences. This is what our product is. It's a Bango audience built on purchase behavior targeting. Now, this is data that we uniquely have that shows what a user buys. No one cares what an individual user buys, but collectively, if all of you bought the same type of thing in the same type of app, now we can put everybody into an audience of payers. And this is the big distinction, because we're talking about payers rather than new users. This reveals insights and patterns that can only come from purchase behavior targeting or purchase behavior data in the first place. And this is what our company does. Using this data to scale your way out of this apocalypse is what we're all about. And there's been some trends and findings that I want to share today that we have discovered amongst our data that I think it actually is extremely applicable to this apocalypse situation that we're in. There's 3 tips I want to share with you today. This is the first one, and I think the right way to think about all this is sort of concentric circles radiating out. So let's start in the middle, or excuse me, in the very beginning, sort of a tight circle. Somewhat obvious, but target users who pay in similar apps to your own, right? Stay in your lane. And it's also really important to do this at a very granular level. Don't just say, well, I make a casual game, I should target other casual games. That's true, but you want to get more narrow, a lot more focused. Get as specific as you can. If you make a social casino game, it's a poker app, target other poker apps. If it's a blockchain-based game, target other blockchain-based games. Really try to get specific, think about your competition. The kinds of results you can see, I have 3 little case studies here that show what happens when you get really, really tight and really specific. Upland is a partner of ours. They make a metaverse blockchain-based property trading game. They didn't just do blockchain games or metaverse games or casual games. They got very, very specific to property trading games. And you can see by using purchase behavior targeting, significantly higher ROAS, much lower CPA, and lower cost per unique purchaser. Really, really good results by getting specific. Nexon, another partner of ours, actually launching their game Counterside. Very, very specific in RPG apps. Very, very strong results. Higher ROAS, lower cost. TryWin is a social casino developer, but again, they make a slots app. Focusing on slots, that's the way that they got these really strong results. Not just all social casino apps, not just, or even adjacent ones, really, really specific onto slots apps. So that's lesson 1. Target your apps, getting in your own category, and being specific. Let's go out one rung out. When you target in your own app, that's good, but it turns out that there are adjacent and overlapping categories of purchasers that are not immediately obvious. Finding those overlapping or adjacent categories is really, really important. The way I visualize this is if you put sort of like an orb in the middle, a circle in the middle, and that's your app category, there's an overlap of other paying categories that will overlap to a certain degree. Those other adjacent categories are extremely important to target, although they may not be super relevant for you. So you can come and work with us or talk to other folks in this industry and identify those types of categories. I got a few examples here to share. In arcade game apps, there's a 60% overlap with what other category? Well, I don't know, casual games. Okay, not too far away, it makes sense. In interactive story games, 72% of payers will also pay in what category? Puzzle games, totally unrelated, and yet there they are, huge overlap. 72% of payers in interactive story games will also pay in puzzle games, puzzle apps. That's a category that if you make an interactive story game, you also got to be targeting puzzle games. Well, what about puzzle games? Let's go the other direction. Strategy games, huge overlap. You can imagine 2 circles overlapping by 40%. That's the degree to which payers occur in both of those overlapping groups. Brain training games, well, I don't know, 57% of what? Metaverse-based games. The point I'm trying to show here, I'm trying to illustrate is that these are 2 categories that are unrelated, and yet you see commonality between the payers and their groups. Bubble shooter games, 70% overlap with bingo games. Cool. Who would have known? If you're a bingo app game developer, if you're a bubble shooter game app developer, you would never know these things. You gotta find these overlapping pairs, overlapping categories, and target them in your campaigns. Dating apps, 45% of payers in dating apps go where? Action games. Cool. Some of these correlations are obvious. Many of them are not. Blockchain games. One more after this. Action survival. And finally this, in racing games, there's a 43% overlap with Marvel-based IP games, like the comic book Marvel games. So again, the point, find your payers in the app category that their app is in. Obviously that makes sense. Go out the next rung and find the overlapping and adjacent categories. Sometimes it's obvious, and unfortunately sometimes it's not. Okay, so now the third and final rung out of this marketing strategy to use in-app purchase, by using purchase behavior targeting to scale your in-app purchase, is to focus on the high lifetime value app categories, because unfortunately not all of these overlapping categories are as high value as other ones. Some of them are in fact better, and by doubling down on where not only the overlap is, but also the highest value, that's how you're going to make the most. In solitaire games, of the users that make payments, 20% of them will make 7 payments or more a month. It's very, very high purchase frequency. So to the extent that you're in either you're as a solitaire game app developer, or it's a category that's adjacent, don't ignore it. Really, really high purchase frequency. Casual games. 28% of payers in casual games will make 5 or more payments per month. Again, very high purchase frequency. Webtoons games, 30% of those payers will make 4 or more payments per month. Very, very important not to miss these. So to the extent that you can target these, or adjacent to yours, or they're actually your category, very high value, it's a good place to be. My sort of radiating concentric circles out again here. Focus on your app category, keep it tight, look at your competition, try to stay in your lane, and don't go overly broad. Next up, find your crossover app categories. They're there. Sometimes it's obvious. Unfortunately, sometimes not always. And then finally, of the overlapping and adjacent categories, some are more valuable than others. Focus on the ones that are obviously more valuable. If you don't know yourself, if your data can't tell you, come talk to us. We're happy to help you figure this out. And then to wrap it up, this is it's a tough neighborhood that we all live in these days, unfortunately. This is the apocalypse. I was on a panel earlier this morning, and one of my co-panelists made the observation that this is just the new normal. It's not news, it's just sort of the situation that we're all in. So we have to deal with it. But it's not doom and gloom, and in fact, it doesn't have to be. In fact, many advertisers are thriving because they have great apps, and they are diversifying their marketing spread, their portfolio, and they're using purchase behavior targeting to find their way out. This is how we're going to all do it. Doesn't need cookies, doesn't need IDFA. It's independent of that. It's a powerful, scalable platform. And then once you've decided to get behind it, those 3 steps. Similar apps, find those payers in high crossover and overlapping categories, and then try to focus on the high LTV categories. So with that, is there any questions or any other feedback?
Thank you. Lose my headset. Thank you very much. That was great. If anyone has any questions, we've got a couple of minutes. I can bring a mic to you so we can all hear the questions. I've got a question to get us going. How does someone onboard? What's the process? If someone has seen this and thought, well, that looks great for my game, what do they do next?
Oh, wow. Dave, you teed it right up. Well, just come talk to us. We're not the only company that does this. We're one of the more pioneering companies we feel, but we're happy to help you figure this out and work with us. Come talk to me. Brett at Bango. Come talk. What's the kind of process for a developer? Is it an SDK? Is it a SaaS thing they do online? It's another good question. No, it's not. These are custom audiences we're talking about. Right. It's the way we administer these as a custom audience that we share from our ads account up to your ads account. So there's no SDKs, nothing to integrate. This is just data that we use to produce custom audiences that I'm sure many app developers are using today. Often on your own data, but now you can use other purchase behavior targeting to build these audiences. I
thought those insights were great. I've got another question for you, but I don't want to hog the limelight. Does anyone else here have a question for Brett? Right, one over here, that's good. Otherwise, I'll just keep going.
Thank you for your sharing. Yeah, I just wanted to ask you real quickly about, it was quite interesting what you shared over there. Is that applicable for only for IAPs, or is that something you see that can be applied for subscriptions as well? Oh.
Can you repeat the question?
You don't have a headset.
I'll go. So your question was, does the segmenting that you're talking about, the model that you said, the insights, are they also valid for a subscription model as well as just in-app purchases?
Yeah, 100%. In fact, a subscription, we consider a subscription in a form of an in-app purchase. And in fact, a lot of the data that we process is born from subscription apps themselves. So yes, it's a good question, and yes.
Great, thank you. a question I was going to ask was about how granular those segments get. As you say, it's those are categories that lots of people use, but you were getting very specific there with the kind of social casino and things. I mean, roughly how many, how atomic does it go?
Not all app categories get subdivided like that. Games is obviously the biggest one, and it's applicable to most people here. And that's the one that actually gets atomic, as you say. Yeah. Like financial services apps doesn't go that granular, but games do. Yeah. And then it's like subcategory. The best example I think is slots. Is social casino, because that really does get very specific. But again, that's the point. Try to get as specific as you can. There's many different kinds of casual games. There's many different kinds of social casino games. Get specific, and the more specific, the better.
That's great. Thank you. I think we're probably out of time. What I would say is I know that it can be quite nerve-wracking to ask a question in front of everyone, particularly with the artificial kind of mic and everything. But if you do want to ask questions of Brett, the emails are up on the board there, or you're probably in Meet to Match as well, right? I guess they can find you around the venue?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So there you go. So if you have any questions from what you've just seen, you can track Brett down there. But in the meantime, thank you very much for that. That was great.
Thanks, Dave.